By wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all pleasant and precious riches. Proverbs 24, verses 3 and 4. Hello, ladies. I'm so happy that you came to see me. In fact, I'm very honored that you would come. And if you're new here, this is a Homemaker Support Listen As You Go radio. So welcome to Homemakers Radio. There are other Homemaker Radios or Housewife Radios programs on YouTube if you'd care to go look them up. I saw a few of them, and there are other Homemaker Support or Homemaker Inspiration. And so there's plenty of it on the web and on YouTube. But today I am going to show you just a few things that might help you be more motivated and keep you company while you work. Because a lot of the things we do are very isolating and repetitive and can get a little monotonous if, every day we're doing the same thing. In fact, if you'll go to the Fly Lady page on the web, she will tell you what your daily routine should be, and it's always the same thing, isn't it? It's dishes and laundry and floors and cleaning up the sink in the bathroom and just the normal daily things, and then you add maybe something you do once a week and then maybe something you do once a month. So it can, to some people, feel rather tedious. On the other hand, if you were hired, a lot of people that are hired to do janitor work or maid work, they're not bored because they're getting paid. But in a way, you do get paid because there's going to be some results and there will be rewards. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. But before you go to work, I will ask you please to go to my blog to listen to this, because it's better atmosphere over there, not so many distractions. And you can leave a comment there if you like. And I want to show you my teacup, and then you can go about doing something if you need to load something, unload something. And so today my teacup is this little gorgeous little Royal Albert green teacup, and someone gave this to me. You know who you are, and I absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, it has such a nice big handle. That's what I like. I've just about retired the ones with the teeny tiny handles. I really like this one. And I wanted to give you another hint about washing these things. I have a paper towel here, and I hope you're buying the paper towels that have the smaller pieces you can tear off. So much of a paper towel is wasted sometimes on small things. So what you do is you moisten this and you dip it in soda bicarb, and then you can go around it like this, and the inside where the T is, and the marks and the lines like this, and then rinse it out. And so pay attention to under the handle. And I told you about a brush the other day, and it was from the laundry section of the stores, and it's for the lint, for the dryer lint. Reach further in there after you take the lint thing out. You can get a lot more out, and the dryer will be more efficient. But I found it great for scrubbing teacups. So anyway, I'll put a picture of this on there for you. I just think it's so nice. I'm in this little room. I'm on the other wall today, and this is this teeny tiny room that I've squeezed myself into to broadcast to you today. And I have a few things to talk about. But first, I like to divide this into 3 sections, and one is preparation, which includes your appearance and your attitude. And the other is homemaking hints, or just housekeeping, maybe even just inspiration for housekeeping, and maybe read a few books. And the other is the personal improvement, or working with people, learning to smooth off the rough edges of your approach or your interaction with people in the home, especially. And now that a lot of people are home, they're finding out how important that is. And what we find out is kind of fascinating, and that is that we can love each other and overlook a lot of things, and that those two go together. So I want to start out by showing you what's behind here before you go to work. Is that we're supposed to be in the spring months or summer months, but we often have winter weather, and it gets cold and the heat clicks on again, and it's rather gloomy and dreary. And so I got out I always loved this old magazine, and it was by Hoffman Media, and it's 2013 old. Things get old fast, but 2013, and I particularly liked the cover, and that always inspired me, and I'll tell you how I happened to get it. But the quality is so good that, look, I've had this since 2013, and it's as smooth as if it were bought straight off the newsstand, and the quality of the paper is wonderful. And so I got it out again because it felt so wintry here, and it just cheered me up wonderfully and showed me that they have such beautiful pictures and colors and ways to make the home warm and homey on a cold day, and shows the inside of kitchens. And particularly I liked the colors of the florals. I will try to put a picture here, and I liked this one too. This reminds me of a tea room. I'll get a picture of that for you. And then in the back, of course, I love those beautiful 12 teacups, and there were recipes. And I tried some of them, and I wanted you to know that they worked out really good and really well. But if you are in the southern hemisphere and it's starting to get a bit chilly now because your autumn is coming on and your winter, and you're thinking you might like this. It's delicious. It's leek soup, and I tried it. It has a couple tablespoons of real cream in it, and it has chicken and I believe chopped up russet potato, and it's like a chowder, and it was so good. And Mr. S always says with homemade soups, with the homemade soups rather than the canned soups, you feel health instantly. You just feel wonderful after you've had some of it, and the pot is empty too fast. But if you are in the southern hemisphere and you want one of these winter cottage magazines, I just love the quality of it, and I like the centerpieces, and it didn't bother me that it's supposed to be spring. Normally I don't want to go back to anything that's wintry, but it didn't bother me at all to get it out. It made me feel good. It just was so refreshing, and it had desserts in here. It had a cherry pie. Look at this beautiful bread, and I love the candles lit on there. And so I wanted to tell you about this. But if you are in Australia, for example, or New Zealand, or the southern hemisphere, and your measurements are not the same in cooking, we're still using cups and teaspoons and tablespoons and ounces and pounds. And but if you're a cook, you can read the ingredients and figure it out. You really don't even have to know the measurements. You can kind of look at it and know what it's supposed to taste like. And you can also get a translation on the web of what it all is. And I particularly like the back page. The Hoffman Media, they're the ones that produce Victoria Magazine and Tea Time Magazine, and they do a real good job on the whole thing. Like inside is a picture. It's like an end paper, and no advertisements unless the advertisements go with what they're publishing here. The early Victoria magazines the advertisements were out of sync with what the magazine was about. Now, they also had an article in here on quilt care, and because I was putting away some of my quilts because I only use them in the winter, it had the quilt care here. I'll just read that to you. And so if you got something to do, I will be showing you more later on. And I know if you're not feeling well, just want to watch, I might have a few more things to show you today. But quilt care. To clean, it is better not to wash heirloom quilts, but if the need arises, hand wash them in cold water with a small amount of liquid detergent. Rinse and gently squeeze out excess water. Place the quilt flat on a sheet on the floor and let it air dry. I usually, if I have to do that, I will put it on a sheet and then roll the sheet up and squeeze a little bit more out. To store, fold the quilt into thirds and put acid-free tissue paper between folds before placing inside an acid-free box. Don't store your quilt in anything wooden. It will draw the acid out of the quilt and rot the fabric. Didn't know that. Keep the quilt out of harsh, direct light and air. And that is one thing about anything that you use, is that it to fold it in different ways. Every time you put it away is important, and that way those folds won't develop in one place where it gets thinner. I just refold them in a different way, and I turn them the other way or back and front. And also, it's really good to rearrange your furniture once in a while because the light's going to hit it a different way, and it won't get faded on one side. And so I also wanted to show you something. The reason this was sitting here is that the reason I have this magazine is because a friend visited me once, and she stopped at the grocery store on the way over, and she always does this when she comes into town, and she bought some things at the grocery store that were more high-end, exclusive things I wouldn't have bought for myself. Like she'd put some special pasta in here, or some jar of something that normally I wouldn't buy because it's a little more expensive. And she went to the Dollar Tree and she got some of these gorgeous roses. And then she rolled the paper bag down. See, I have a paper bag here. She got the paper bag. We're getting our bags free again at the grocery store. So she had the grocery store bag, and she rolled it down and made a kind of a basket out of it. And then she lined it with this beautiful tissue paper. You know, the big what do you call it, pink of it, at the Dollar Tree. And she just filled it with that. Then she had an instant basket, and she had a lot of other things in here too. Just whatever she could get at the grocery store and the Dollar Tree. So I just wanted you to know that was why I had that, and I really like it, and I want to put that back there. So today I want to talk first about your appearance. So we go to the appearance first and why this is necessary. You know, there are some people who learn better or function better with a visual aid. You know, Christ talked about, he made visual aids, you know, and he would point to a tree or an olive tree or something and make a story around it to make the principle more well understood. And so your appearance then can be your visual aid. This is going to be the thing that's going to make you understand how important your work at home is and how important you are as a vessel to carry the hospitality to your own family. Now we're in a time where maybe you're not going to be able to show hospitality, but you can practice on your family and treat them very, very well. And then when you have an opportunity to have someone over or someone is coming over, you'll be in such good practice that you will do it with great ease. And so the preparation has to be your appearance, because you don't know what is going to happen today. You know, when the Bible says you do not know what will be on the morrow. And we also don't know what's going to be today. So we don't know from moment to moment. We do have our plans, and we try to carry them out so that there are no upsetting surprises. That's one of the reasons we clean house, is so that we don't have disasters and surprises and things get in our way and stop us from our goals. And so that the day you don't just drift through the day waiting for something to happen and then being disappointed. You can plan the day. You can make a plan. So in preparation, when you create your appearance, just give yourself a healthy glow. Now, a lot of people have asked me, because I'm aged, how I do, you know, skincare and that sort of thing. And I would like to elaborate more on that, but I think in general, clean and healthy, and looking fresh, looking energetic and not all dried out and tired. And I think that's just the secret of it. And if you find that something worked for you when you were very young, as far as hair care and skin care, and your skin and hair has changed, then all you have to do is make slight difference, a slight improvement. Something slight. We'll go more into it maybe on a special edition. So a healthy glow, get dressed, and it helps you have a fresh outlook on life. And it might be, you know, there might be something troubling you, but at least get yourself prepared. Look good and feel good about how you look. And there might be something troubling you, but that appearance is going to help a little bit to ease it, to ease the the discomfort of of any kind of trouble that you have, and it might. And then also I would suggest that don't just rely on your appearance, but substitute good thoughts for bad thoughts. Are you ever troubled? Do you ever feel like there's a thought that keeps coming back and you don't want to entertain it? And first of all, I would say stop listening to, watching, or reading the news media, because even sometimes the conservative media is rather troubling. And substitute something that is informative yet less hype in it, that doesn't keep you upset all the time. And substitute good thoughts for bad thoughts. And then to do this, you might need to have an arsenal of things in your mind that you revert to when a bad thought comes. Now, Mr. S told me that when he was younger, he always wanted to go to Hawaii. And so when he had any kind of stress, whether it was trying to get something done at a deadline, or any kind of problem with people, or any kind of problem with money, he would just mentally escape to Hawaii. I know some people can do that, and it helps other people not so much. But if you will get dressed and be well groomed, it does ease the situation a little bit. But have an arsenal of thoughts about good things, good ideas you have for your home, for your life, spiritual goals, refinement, and things that you want to improve on, or some project that you'd like to do, maybe a piece of fabric you want to work with, just or something that you would really like. Think about the way you would really like things to be, and this also affects the way you dress, and the way you dress affects the way you think. And you can substitute good thoughts for bad thoughts. And I think getting dressed is very helpful, and getting dressed well. And so I was telling you that I'm sitting in this small room, but I have great plans for its improvement. And it all goes back to my previous talk, to look at how things can be, or the possibilities of things, and learn to be a positive possibility thinker. I know a lot of people have made a lot of fun of that, saying, you people with your positive thinking, you think that's going to change the world. Well, I would say never, never. As a lady at home, and as someone who's particularly interested in getting her home functional, don't wait for the world to straighten out. Don't wait for political things to quit. Just dig in and get busy on your home, and you will find that you're going to be better for it. And some people come out better in a problem. And one thing that I like to do is, if someone's trying to trouble me in any way, let's say even online, that will be the day that I'll go clean up my bathroom and maybe paint part of a wall, and I'll think, well, that's what you get for troubling me. My house is going to get better. And so this is the way it should be with politics, with the government. Anything that's troubling you, you go outside, dig in the garden, make that better, put on a wonderful gourmet meal at home, learn to cook, buy a new set of pots and pans, buy new dishes, and just say, well, that's what you get for being such a problem. And so you're going to, a lot of people will flourish in trouble. You know, when the Bible says, I was made for this, a brother was made for adversity. So this is where you come out stronger, when you start taking problems and using them in a great way, and laughing all the way. So I'm going to read you a little poem today. If you've got something you need to fold, load, unload, a box of papers you need to sort through, things you need to do, you can take this around with you, or sit still and do some, sort through something, or clean up something. I always thought that the kitchen was the hardest and the longest to get through, and I always like to take my little video player and put in wives and daughters, and learn some more things from their witty expressions. All right, this is called The Man Who Thinks He Can. Now, when it says man, it means mankind, and that's the way the Bible is too. When it says man, it means mankind. And we've studied the Greek and the Hebrew, and we know that there's a difference between a man and mankind. So don't get upset about that. If you don't think it's for the women, it's for the women too. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. You know, someone told me once that if you ask for something, you're more likely to get it than if you don't ask at all. And even if you don't get it, you at least definitely wouldn't get it if you didn't ask for it. So this is it. If you'd like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. If you are down in the mouth and you have a gloomy atmosphere, it's almost a cinch that it's a truth that you probably aren't going to get anywhere. And if you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's mind. I've told you that before, that the greatest treasure you have is your mind, and that the most threatening thing is anything that debilitates your mind and keeps you, because your mind is what's going to motivate your hands. You're not going to be useful as a human being if your mind is gone, half gone, and so you cannot listen to the naysayers. You cannot listen to bad news all the time. And I told you before, when this big crisis is over, they're going to think of something else. Once the state found out that some of us thrived at home, they're going to make you miserable at home. They're going to turn off your water, turn off your heat, tell you can't use your air conditioning, or keep your garage door closed. They're going to think of all kinds of things. And see, I thought of this ahead of time. You don't have to be a prophet to figure this out. They'll tell you something is not good for you. They'll tell you that it's not good for you to be closed up in your house. Well, of course, they've been telling homemakers that and homeschoolers that forever, haven't they? I've received a lot of those jabs over the years. And when they find out that we actually thrived, some of us actually thrived by being home, and developed new businesses, new talents, and improved. Our lives were greatly improved at home. Then they're going to find out a way to tell you how bad it is, and make it so that it's intolerable to live at home. They're going to take something away from us, to take our humanness away from us, to take our soul away, and to take away our faith. So let me just finish this poem for you. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win the prize. And of course, in our homemaking, our prize is looking at that beautiful, clean room that also has some beauty in it, and smelling the beautiful home-cooked food, or seeing the preparation of it, and the visual beauty of it, and the well-set table, and the clean floors, and the fresh-smelling laundry, and a happy family. Those are rewards in themselves. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Oh, I'm sure we've all known people like that we thought probably wouldn't get anywhere in life, and they did a lot better than we are, because they decided to ignore all the false predictions for themselves, all the bad news, and just go with what they wanted to do, and they thought they could. So I want to go to the household hints today. I showed you about the magazine and the basket. I thought that was a great idea, what she did. And it was just a quick thing that she could do when soon she got in the car, turn the paper bag down and stuff it, and then she came into the house with the gift. I just thought that was precious. So I wanted to tell you about Gorilla Glue today, because often I've told you we should be wearing these little ankle boots in the house, and not those big, not those great big shoes that the sports shoes and stuff. They're not very pretty, and they really don't flatter the foot, and they're not lightweight as far as I'm concerned. And I'd like to have a thinner sole so I can feel floor, you know, and I also like how they look when I go out. They they look good with a skirt and a dress. So, but I wanted to tell you something about these boots, and I really like them. I have several pair of them, but because these days the sole is not stitched onto the uppers, it's glued. Sometimes the sole comes apart. And the other day I noticed the heel came off, and I wanted to keep the boot because there wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just the sole had separated. So I put Gorilla Glue on it, and then I put a chair leg inside of the boot to weight down the Gorilla Glue into the heel of the boot, and also the toe. Later on, I put a book or something on it, or put a rock inside of it, and it just works beautifully and has given my boots new life. I used to take shoes and boots that had the sole separated, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I just either gave them away or threw them away or something, but now I'm saving them all, and this Gorilla Glue is the answer. So you can rescue some boots that way, and some shoes. The other thing is if you ever desire a fizzy drink, you just need something that's a little more refreshing, but you don't want to drink pop or Coke or anything like that. Well, I was looking up some experiment or something for children, and I discovered this fizzy drink and decided to try it. It made my, if you have an upset stomach or you just don't feel quite right, but you want something fizzy, and it really worked. And it said to squeeze half of a lemon into a cup or glass, and of course through a sieve so that you can catch all the pulp and the seeds, and then fill it up equal in drinking water, the same amount, same proportions as the drinking water, and then add half a teaspoon of soda bicarb, and it'll all fizz. And then you put your, if you want to put sugar in it to sweeten it, whatever you use, honey or whatever to sweeten it, and you just put a little bit in to taste, and taste it to see if it's sweet enough, and then add a little bit more. And I tried it this morning. I feel so much better, and I got my fizzy drink without having to buy even any more of the fizzy drinks. The carbonated drinks it's not the same as it used to be. It's made out of something else, and sometimes it's not real sugar or real anything. It's just artificial. So this lemon drink was really, really good, and you can look up that by typing in how to make your own fizzy drink, and they'll show you online. There are plenty of fruit fizzy drinks, and they use the soda bicarb. Or, I don't know, there might be something else I use too. Now, so I wanted to say that one of the reasons that we want to keep house, and one of the reasons I have Homemaker Radio, is because I thought that instead of approaching it as some grueling job, there's a grim job to be done, like Emma said, instead of approaching it that way, we could think of things that are higher and things that are nobler. And that's why we have a noble cause for our home. And you have the word noble in the Bible several times, and it doesn't mean nobility in the way of royalty, but in a way it does. It has a double meaning. It means doing noble, good things. It means doing things that are required of a person who is noble. And so when we're cleaning, when we're doing the kitchen, when we're cleaning up the living room, you're thinking of it as a higher, nobler cause, because you're preparing it for very special people that were given to you by God, and you're in charge of them. These people are special. And what a loss it would be if we didn't have them. Sometimes you can feel rather irritated with everybody, but without them, you would realize even more what a special gift they are to you. And so when we clean house, we're thinking about that. We're thinking about them. We're thinking about their souls. We want them to be happy there. This is a place we want them to come home to. This is a place where we want them to have good memories. And one thing I wanted to say about about moods and the weather and stuff is that there is something to the fact that when the air pressure is more, that it does depress the spirits in a way. It depresses your spirit, in a way. And so when you know that, well, this is an overcast day, it's going to feel heavy. feel heavy on your mind, and you don't feel lighthearted, and you don't feel happy, and maybe a little bit gloomy, just like the weather. When you know that, then you can prepare yourself with things like that wonderful magazine book that I showed you that I just love so much. It just lifted me out of it, when the weather is like that. The weather does have an effect on your health. It does have an effect on your blood pressure and your health. It really does. And humidity, things like that. And when you know this, you can learn to ignore it and move on with your goals. And you say, weather, I'm not paying attention to you today. I've got to get this done. And I have gone through many dark days that started out dark, ended up dark, were dark in between, but just didn't even notice it because I put my favorite music on and I got busy and I had a list. And speaking of lists, I will show you something that I made today that might work for you for a list, but we'll go into that later. Now, another thing too that you have to realize is that your reward is usually your natural consequences. The reward of having of all the work you've done. Don't expect praise. Don't look to others for praise. I've heard people say, well, I just feel invisible around here. Nobody ever gives me any credit for what I do. But you can give yourself the credit by the natural consequences of it. Just that wonderful feeling of looking at a cleaned, sparkly window, or a garden, a flower garden that's all been put in order, or a freshly swept walk in front of your house, or a clean porch. Just the satisfaction of putting a nice new wreath on the door for this season. Just that wonderful feeling you get when your kitchen is shiny, or when the laundry is all done and it's all folded and the floors are all swept. That's a great reward if you will not approach it in a way that is weighing you down. And that's why I say you have to substitute good thoughts for a gloomy mood. You've just got to switch it over. And it does take some practice. But I would say, if you're wearing an apron, it's got a pocket, put a list of things that you'd like to do or see, or like the way life would be for you, the way you would like life to be, the things that you would like to happen. Put those a list, or things that you like to think about, the list in your pocket. And when you get one of those discouraging thoughts, pull that list out and have a look at it. And I have said before in previous videos that you can substitute a prayer. You might be praying all day long if you have a bad thinking habit, if you have a bad thought process. You might be praying all day long. And also, if you have a little verse or a scripture that's easy for you to understand, it's good to mull on it. Keep that in your pocket. And eventually, after you've read it, I don't believe in memorizing. I just think read it enough times, and pretty soon you know it by heart. And that actually sticks in your mind better than trying to memorize it, in my opinion. But if you have a verse that you could just dwell on, and the way that you can do it is you can divide it up into sections and dwell on each section, or emphasize a different word each time you say the verse. I'm just trying to give you an example, like thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And then you just keep going until you've emphasized it all separately, and then you draw out the rich meaning of it. And once you've done that, and I've told you, don't use up your thinking space and your thinking, I call it a bank, your thinking bank. Don't use up your thinking bank on gloomy thoughts, on the news, on the media hype. Don't use it up. Another thing you have to be careful with as a homemaker is not to use up your word bank. You could be talking all day long until people just kind of tune you out. So if you'll make your words rare and important, then you'll have plenty left. I was in the ladies' Bible class on this last week, and we usually sing one song, and then we read a chapter of the Bible, and then we have tea, and we have a discussion. But I said to them, why don't you each pick a song? We'll just sing all the songs, maybe one verse of all the songs. I said, I've saved up all my voice strength. I haven't talked to anybody all week. So I said, I've got enough voice. I could probably sing all those songs. So save your voice for things that are important and use nods and smiles and mm-hms and action. And I would say also be careful with children with long, long explanations because they'll lose it. They'll lose the meaning of it and what you're trying to tell them halfway through. If you're trying to give long explanations and then give them a quiz afterwards, like what did I say? That's really not fair. And how would you like to listen to a long, long lecture and then have to tell the professor what he said? So let's do unto others as we'd have them do to us. Learn what works best for you and your children and use that. You know, with children too, you can stuff their heads full of knowledge, but it doesn't mean that they will be successful in life. Remember the poem by Nixon Waterman, Hurry the Baby Fast as You Can, Hurry him, worry him, make him a man, off with his baby clothes, into his pants, feed him on brain food and make him advance, and stuff his head full of figures and facts, keep on jamming it in till it cracks, and then it just goes on till he's 60 years old, and instead then he dies of nervous exhaustion or something. So you can look that poem up. So don't stuff their heads full of knowledge from homeschooling, but make it have a reason. And the reason is you want them to have a nobler, higher approach to life and a feeling of well-being and to have successful relationships in their home. And this all starts with their home where they are right now. If they want a future successful relationship and a future home life when they're grown up, then this is their practice. This is their learning place for that. The other thing you can do about, I said you have your visual rewards for homemaking. You have the feeling of satisfaction and of well-being because you've done what was required of you. You've done what you could, but the other thing is just to give yourself a reward, and it could be something as simple as taking a favorite teacup and sitting down for a hot cup of tea, or indulging in some little thing that you like really well, reading or writing or treating yourself to something, and or for getting something for the home, and or personal improvement, anything that you like. I wanted to say something about homeschooling to some of you, that the material bores you. That's why I suggested that you go through it, that you become a student. You order yourself a book, order yourself any age group, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, from some homeschool company, and you go through it. And if it bores you, if it makes you yawn, if it irritates you, and this is what I said about with children too. If you're finding they're not responding well to the curriculum and that it's just making tension between you and the child, put it away. You have the right to go find a better book, a better curriculum, or maybe you just prefer hands-on learning. And there are books that show you how to have science experiments and a lot of fun in the kitchen. And there are many other things you can do to teach children. And the only thing the Bible talks about when it talks about education is it's a relationship between the parents and the children. It says, you shall teach your children. Also told Moses to teach the people. So education is supposed to be from the home and from the church. And so what we've got to do is get it out of our heads that all this book learning is going to educate us, because we have to just keep educating as we go through life. And just because you have a child sitting there, let's say 5 hours a day in a public school, doesn't mean he's absorbed it all. And most of the time they check out mentally and start getting more socially focused, because it's more surface and more shallow and a lot easier. And so don't ever think that you can teach school just using books, because there are many other ways to teach at home. Now, I've talked for about 40 minutes, and I wanted to talk about the furnace of affliction. We talked about that last time because I gave a scripture about how refinement was mentioned in the Bible. And we talked about how to refine gold and how to refine oil. And where God said, I have not tried you as silver, but in the furnace of affliction. And how does affliction refine you? Well, this is very interesting because your trials and your overcoming obstacles and all the things you have to go back and redo, or things that get undone and you have to redo them, actually mature you and make you more patient. I think there was a verse that talked about how patience comes from hardship and from trials. That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we always want patience, but we don't want to go through the stresses that give you the patience. And so the furnace of affliction, that's just about anything that is hard, isn't it? But it does refine you in overcoming obstacles. Now, one of the reasons some people are so cranky is they're really not overcoming their trials or their obstacles. They're not knowing how to. They want something to be a certain way, but they don't want to make it that way. They don't want to fix it. And you cannot really have a successful family, a successful church, or a successful nation unless you have a people that are wanting to make things work better, that are wanting to fix things, that are wanting to keep things peaceful, and that are looking for ways to improve themselves. It really doesn't work unless people want to do that, but they have to want it really bad. And in order to do that, they will have some trials and some affliction, but they'll be refined. And so personal improvement is really, really important when you're running the home. So it's not just about washing dishes and getting the laundry done, but improving yourself and improving the lives of your family, plus helping them with their destiny in life and their goals by helping them learn how to refine their own personality, how to talk to people, how not to talk to people, how to prevent arguments. And remember, I was talking about people who manipulate, and you can start to identify what a manipulation ploy is and what the manipulative words are after a while. I mentioned gaslight, as you know, I talked about where we got the word gaslighting, but I forgot to mention to you in that old movie, and I believe it was from 1948, with Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman, and it was placed in the Victorian era. There was a carriage there, and there was Victorian costumes, and a lot of people watch it just because they like the interiors and the streets and the street lights. Well, it was in the era when the gas light was invented, and these gas lights, the street lights were gas lights, and in the house was a gas light. The chandelier were gas lights. They were powered by gas. And when this man went upstairs and turned the lights on up there, it would make the gas lights, the chandelier lights, flicker or go down or go completely out or just come back on again. And the woman that was living there didn't know that. And so every time those lights dimmed, when this man left the house and he went around the back stairs and went upstairs to this attic and turned the lights on up there, she didn't connect it. She just saw these lights dimming and she became frightened. She just became so frightened that she ended up, going to bed and pulling the covers over her head, and that's made her think something was happening that wasn't happening, and made her think she was losing her mind because these gas lights were flickering and coming on and going off. Even today, when your light flickers a little bit and electricity starts to go off, it does kind of seize you up, doesn't it? So, but when you look at that as a signal, you can see people, maybe even in the home, who are manipulative. You start to identify, okay, what did they say exactly? What was the look on their face? And what happened before that and after that? And you can start analyzing it as a mother as to who's doing the manipulating and who's doing the triggering, and then who's also not responding properly. And people can't trigger you if you just shrug your shoulders. And that's one thing that the instigator of trouble just hates. They just hate for you not to care. And so now I want to talk a little bit about activism, because people are always, watching these videos about people getting active about politics and everything, but I would say probably the best activism for the Christian lady at home is to have a beautiful house, a clean house, and to be teaching her children and to be encouraging everyone to increase their talents, like learning something new every day, becoming proficient at something. And I did know this one family where she let each of her children choose a pie that they liked, that they would always be able to make. And so each one chose their favorite pie, and they learned to be proficient at that. And then when it was their turn to cook, that would be the pie you would get. And then she let each of the children choose a skill that they would like to learn, or a craft, or something that was creative that they could make. Now, they were allowed to drop it if the interest waned, or they found out it wasn't their talent. And so that each one of them had something that they could do. And I think that's really important too, because that's personal activism. And personal activism would be, in this situation, would be to go to church, go shopping, go do what you need to do to live a normal life. We've kept everything as normal as we can around here. The church never ever stopped. We kept open, but we were quiet about it, and we didn't try to be, in your face rebellious, because we're not against anything. We are for doing God's will, and He has told us not to neglect, Hebrews 10:25, not to neglect the assembling of ourselves together. And everybody wanted to come, and they agreed, and they came, and we had worship every Lord's Day. We also did not stop our lives in any way, and we didn't stay home any more than we normally do. This is pretty normal for us because we're home most of the time anyway. Mr. S has his own office. A lot of people around here stay home because they're farmers and they're home-based anyway. Homeschoolers are always home, so it was only a slight difference to many of us. The post office was still open. The banks were still open. The gas stations were open. The department stores were open, and the grocery stores were open. I'm trying to think. They're just and the traffic was pretty normal, so it wasn't a big deal for us. But if you want to keep your freedom, you have to exercise it. So remember, we do not get our liberties from the government. We get them from God. The government's only there to keep, to safeguard them and to keep our liberties, not to take them away from us. So I want to go back to preparation here, because I might have missed something, and that is, for someone who says, I don't have any nice clothes to wear at home, I say, wear the nicest clothes that you have and try to look nice. One thing that you can do to make clothes look nice, if you say you don't have really anything that inspires you to wear, is to press them. Even an old t-shirt looks better if you've pressed it with a hot iron. Now, you cannot use a hot iron on acrylics, on synthetics, because it will melt them. But on cottons and linens and natural fibers and wovens, you can press them, and it just makes a world of difference. Even this plaid shirt that I'm wearing, I pressed it. I've got an ironing board out with an iron on it at all times in one of the rooms I have, so that at the last minute, if I change my mind about what's already hanging in the closet and I want to get something out of the dryer, or the dryer doesn't necessarily make everything wrinkle-free, and that little extra pressing just makes it seem so crisp. And so just even if your clothes are rather dull, and I can remember doing this when we were younger, back in the olden days, is we would take our old, we had hand-me-downs, used clothes, rummage sale clothes, and we would wash them, starch them, and iron them. We just thought we had new clothes. It felt so good. So be careful not to have your mind clouded by the media and with constant indoctrination. It's hard to understand the truth and be delighted. The Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. But it's hard to do that. It's hard to delight yourself in the Lord if your mind has been clouded and indoctrinated by a constant series of education and news media and opinions by everybody. And I would say that once you put that aside, once you decide you're not going to listen to it, read it, or look at it, that then your mind starts to clear up after. Well, it's like fasting. You just start getting more clarity. And so then the best thing you can do is live your life the way you want to, in the way that, to me, embraces your freedom, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be active by living, you keep your freedom by exercising it. That's what you're doing, is exercising your freedom. And each generation has to do it. Your freedom isn't here, just because the Constitution was created. You have to reenact the Constitution. You have to make sure that also you have to keep reading your Bible, and you have to keep praying. You're not just on automatic. So that is activism, isn't it? Now I want to tell you one thing too about when you are on top of the world, when you are happy, when you've got everything under control in your home and you feel really, really good about yourself, is not to forget about the friend or the people who might feel rather lonely. And sometimes, when you're feeling rather distressed because of the isolation, or you're lonely, then you start calling your friends. And but then when you get a hold of yourself and you get busy again and you get preoccupied, you forget about them. What I would suggest you do is, on the days that you feel the best and you're feeling in control and you don't need to talk to a friend, that would be the day that you would send a letter or call somebody just to check on them. You never know, how good that might be for them. And also, I want to talk about this commonplace book that somebody was nice enough to tell me what they were called. I was talking to you about these books that people used to write things from books that they read in it, a little poem or a scripture or a saying or something. They had these little gift books in the olden days, and people would just copy phrases out of them in what's called a commonplace book. I looked it up on the web, and yes, sure enough, history shows that these books were used. But as the modern times came along, like well into the 1900s, these were abandoned, and people were expected to create a great deal of knowledge from textbooks and books and other things, and these were abandoned. And it's a sad thing, because it would be better to write some little thing and ponder on it than to worry about what's in an entire textbook. And it's very refining too. Well, what I did was I had these papers called Graphics 45. They're in my stash of scrapbook papers that I never used. In fact, they might not even be mine. They might be somebody else's in the family. They're really pretty, aren't they? And here's some more of them here. And this is another page here. It's got a little bird cage on the bottom. I thought I should use those. So what I did is I cut one of these out, because they're like a card size. And I cut out some matching paper, and I made a little book. This says, "A cup of tea warms the soul like a good friend." And so I just cut up one sheet of good medium weight paper. I forget what you call it. And there are about 4 sheets in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there are 4 sheets of it in here. And why I say is to start a little book that you can write things in, things that you've heard, things that you want to remember, and just worth recording. Why I say use a little book: if you get one of those big journals that's real thick, even at the dollar store, chances are you get discouraged before it's finished, and it's not as much fun to write in after a while. I know when I was putting away my mother's things, she reminded me of me, because I would find a notebook that had a few pages written in it, and then she'd start over with another one. And I think it is these notebooks that get a bit gnarly, and the pages get a little worn and old, and you just don't want to use it anymore. Or the book is so thick it's hard to finish it. And I mean, some people do have the determination to do that, but I prefer a little one. Just write what you can in a little one, and that way it's over with. And maybe next time you'd start something that would be a different subject. Maybe you have a different interest. but these little ones aren't as easy to get bored with. So even if, I would say, even if you want to make a schedule notebook, you could probably do something like this. Now today I want to talk a little bit about the classics. People have asked me about that, and I don't know much about them, but I've been trying to find out what a classic is, and nobody can agree. No expert can agree, no librarian can agree, no intellectual, nobody in a famous college can say what a classic, how do you get something to be a classic? How does something get to be a classic? And some people said that it would be whatever sold the most copies. That was a classic. Whatever's the oldest, that would be a classic. But I would say, in giving yourself and your children a classical education, create your own list of what you think is a classic, okay? Because they're not all good. They still have to follow Philippians 4:8. Are they good? Are they lovely? Are they pure? You know, they have things in them that aren't wholesome. Doesn't mean that they're worth reading. And I'm trying to think of some of the people that they would promote on us when we first started homeschooling, before we had curriculum, before we had all these aids. They say, oh, your kids need to read such and such, and I would read it and think, oh no, I don't want them to do that, you know. And we had a bit of a discussion on a previous post where where some people mentioned names of things that we'd had to read when we were in public school, that we surely did not think was wholesome enough for our children because they were depressing. And so a classic might not be a good thing to read. It might have things in it, a tragedy in it, that you don't want to dwell on. We all have enough trouble in this world, don't we, with gloominess and depression, without reading stuff. You know, especially young people, their emotions are going to be fluctuating a lot, and they need reassurance and love, and to learn to look on the bright side of life, and to be happy, and to make life better. And so reading some of these classics, I don't think is a great idea. Just develop books that you like, that you think are classics. I quote from some of these classics all the time. And but I found something that I thought you might like, and it's called, since I've talked about the weather and the way that it affects us in our homes as homemakers, is Look at the Sky by Eric Sloane. Now, I've mentioned Eric Sloane before, and I like this. I like the sketches that he does, and I like the printing and the thing that it's kind of a handmade type book, and it's how to tell about the weather is. And it goes through the bush pilot of Canada, the guide of North Dakota, the clergyman of South Dakota, the weatherman in Nebraska, the parachutist in Iowa, the private flyer in Illinois, the sign painter in Indiana, the airline pilot in Ohio, the bird watcher in Pennsylvania, the farmer in New Jersey, the doorman in New York, the drover in Connecticut, the sailor in Massachusetts, and the author in Maine. And it tells you what all these people, how the weather affects them, and what their perspective is. And it talks about how the poles attract sun particles and create auroras. Have you ever seen the aurora borealis? And of course it has beautiful sketches in it that I really like. And it tells about, you know, cold air, hot air, the Arctic sky, and it starts out with the Canadian weather. And you know what? When you get finished with this, and then private flyer. Now, when I was a girl in Alaska, every young man had an airplane. Really, it was just everybody. And if they didn't have one, they'd build one. And they had the small planes, you know. And everybody wanted to be a pilot. And today, that's being revived because I've got friends and relatives, and their children are all taking pilot's lessons. Although, you know, I wish I could get a train book. Like, I wish Eric Sloane had, maybe he has written a train book. Because some people just like to get out of the door and have their feet on the ground, and they also like to see the scenery. They like things to go a little slower. And we really need to bring back luxury trains between within a state that are just luxury trains that you travel just because you don't have anything better to do, or you want to get from one point to the other and enjoy it. Where they bring a tea service, silver tea service, and everything. So I'd really encourage young people to get involved in trains and try to learn to be a train conductor instead, or owner of a train company. I think that's really, really important. And because not everybody wants to fly around up there and not really see anything, I'd rather see the old towns. I'd rather go through and see the beautiful nature and the rivers. And I thought you might like this one. And I don't want to read it to you, but it's called Look at the Sky and Tell the Weather by Eric Sloan. I'll try to remember to put that on. Sometimes I'll tell you that I'm going to put a book on there and I don't do it. And let me see if let me just look at my notes again and see if I missed anything here. So when it's talking about classics, instead of saying classic, just say, I want to give my children a classy education. That way you can include manners, you can include appearance, you can include speeches, and you can include interaction with other people. You can include caring for one another. That's classy, isn't it? You can include cleanliness, you can include creativity, and you can include good thoughts and a higher, nobler cause. And remember the song, things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. So I will read this little poem to you, and then I'll say goodbye. If you think you are beaten, you are. Now this would be a good one for children who fall into a heap and get discouraged and give up and just have a meltdown. To teach them this little poem. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like you to win but you think you can, it's almost a cinch that you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, there's that word class again, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win the prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. So remember that you have a higher and nobler cause. And whenever you get down, whenever you feel discouraged and you get the discouraging thoughts, say, self, I'm not going to think about that anymore. I've got too much to do today. So those thoughts, say, no, I'm not going there. Goodbye. So ladies, I hope you've had a wonderful time, and I hope you got something done. I always appreciate it knowing that. I don't ask you to leave comments if you don't have time. They do take time. And one of the reasons that I created this is so that you wouldn't have to stop and watch it all the time. I love the homemaking, love clean with me types of blogs, but I could just sit there all day and watch somebody else do the work. There's that old saying, I love work. I could sit and watch it for hours, but I have to get up after a while and say, hey, I better get busy instead of watching other people work. So I thought if you could listen as you go, you might be able to get something done, and I could keep you a little company without bothering you. So ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day. I love you. God bless, and I'll see you next time. Bye.